I would like to say a few words about Dr. Mellouki, who I knew from a long time. We had the pleasure of sharing several times together at the University of Tours, where he was a student in chemistry. I was doing my studies in biology, and we interacted in several occasions. And later on, we kept in touch. And recently discussed about inviting him to give this webinar. So Dr. Mellouki is a researcher director at the National Center for Scientific Research, CNRS France. He is responsible for the atmosphere and environment theme at the ICAR laboratory in Orléans. He worked at the Aeronomy Laboratory of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in Boulder, Colorado, before joining the CNRS. He is Professor Emeritus at Shandong University, Jinan, Qingdao, China, and visiting professor at Fudan University in Shanghai, and also at the Chinese Academy of Science in Beijing. Dr. Mellouki holds a doctorate in atmospheric chemistry from the University of Paris 7. He is co-author of more than 220 scientific publications in peer-reviewed journals and book chapter dedicated to atmospheric chemistry. Dr. Mellouki is the recipient of the G. KAUFMAN Outstanding Research and Unselfish Cooperation Award in 2020 from the American Geophysical Union. Dr. Mellouki, it's a pleasure having you, and look forward to listening to your topic, which is very pertinent now with, as we all know, the aspect of climate change and from our respect, all the impact on agriculture. So again, thank you for accepting to give this webinar, and looking forward to your presentation and fruitful discussions following your webinar. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Fouzi, can you hear me?
Dr. Mellouki, just one precision, please.
Yeah.
Before giving you the floor, I would like to mention that to the attendants that you can post your written question via the chat on MS Teams or on stream on YouTube. Please fill in your name and affiliation before the question, and do not wait until the end of the webinar to ask them. You can post your question in English and also in French. Thank you, Dr. Mellouki, and welcome.
Okay, thank you again. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to give this presentation. Thank you, Fouzi, for your nice introduction. Thank you, Sibadr, also for preparing this, for keeping in touch with me for many days to get and to prepare this presentation. So the topic, can you see my slides? Just
not yet.
I cannot show you them. Yes, let me share. Is it okay now?
Yes, now we can see the slide. Go ahead.
You can see one screen or two? One screen should be okay?
Should be okay.
Yes, okay then. Okay, so this is a really good chance for me, and I'm really happy to do it for many reasons. So I'm not going back to the reasons, but it's really a good opportunity. So I'll be talking about some topics, and as Fouzi said, I am atmospheric chemist. I've been doing atmospheric chemistry and studying atmospheric processes for many years. And during the years working on this topic, I went through a number of studies related to agriculture, pesticides, and emissions from soil, and so on. So this will link, my talk will link what I have been doing in the field and in the lab with what you guys are working on. And I hope I will be clear. If not, don't hesitate to ask questions and get back to me later on. So first of all, I like what you have made, this the the call. That looks very nice. So I will start with a short introduction to air pollution, going through some aspects which you may know, and then some impacts, and trying to link the agriculture to air pollution, and end up by giving some research topics, directions, if you are willing to start these activities in Morocco. Well, as you know, the pollution, air pollution is complex because it has many sources. It can involve a large number of compounds in different phases, gas phase and aerosols, particles, liquid phase, and so on. And also it has many variables in time and in space. You know, processes occurring in one area could be much different from another area. And this also involves the production of a new species. You can have some emissions as primary products, pollutants. Then within the atmosphere, you can have a number of processes leading to secondary and tertiary pollutants. And this could have much more impacts on air quality and health and so on. So the main issues related to the air pollution, I would start by health. This is the first thing people talk about. Secondly, the economy. Economy is one of the most aspects related to air pollution. Sometimes talking to some people about the economy will lead them to think a little bit about pollution. And then climate. So I will try to address these three topics in relation with air pollution. But starting with the simple scheme showing that, indicating that, could you see my mouse moving or not? Yes?
Yes.
Yes, good, very good, thank you. So once you have emissions, any compound emitted into the atmosphere, I'm showing here some of them. So this is VOCs, which stands for volatile organic compounds. NOx, this is NO and NO2, sulfur compound, particle matters, and so on. Once they are emitted into the atmosphere, they could be dispersed in different areas. They could be transported to very far area, depending on their atmospheric lifetime, what they do within the atmosphere. And they can undergo through a number of processes like oxidations, reactivity, or deposition on surfaces, and so on. And usually the processes in the atmosphere will lead to new products, what I called in the beginning secondary pollutants, but this could go through photochemical, which requires light, or without light. Then you end up by having aerosols or gas phase products, or this species could be deposited to the soil, and that's what we call wet and dry deposition. And so this will depend on each species and on the area again, and the time scale, and so on, and locations. So air pollution is not only what I would say human is injecting to the atmosphere. It also could be what we call commonly background emissions, which emitted by forest. Forests do emit a very large number of VOCs, which we call biogenic VOCs, and forests do contribute through their emission to the formation of aerosols and so on in the atmosphere. So all this will lead ultimately to the formation of toxics on pollutants, which could be harmful to health, to ecosystems, and so on. And the agriculture emissions would go also the same processes. So having emission from urban areas, from I would say transportation or plants, would be, I would say, similar to what agriculture could emit, or soil could emit to the atmosphere. So I am talking here mainly about outdoor air pollution. indoor air pollution is is very important topic, and it's killing a large number of people worldwide. But I'm here talking today about air pollution, outdoor air pollution. So you have it. The emissions are, as I said, mainly through human activities, going from heating, cooking, and so on. And the second emitters, I would say, the agriculture could have a large contribution. And this is, I would say, one of the biggest, having the biggest impacts on air quality and so on. Then you have other sources like power generation, traffic, and so on. What I said, the slide I showed before, was showing some chemical transformation, reactivities involving the emissions from these species, from these plants, and so on. So you have primary compounds, primary pollutants, which are emitted directly from the sources, and the secondary one, which are formed within the atmosphere. And this, again, will depend on environmental factors such as temperature, humidity, wind, and so on. And what is really important is also the lifetime of the pollutants or the species emitted in the atmosphere. They could live long enough to be transported to different areas. They can travel kilometers and kilometers, miles and miles, going horizontally or vertically, going to different places, different continents, or going to the stratosphere, up to the stratosphere in the atmosphere. So, and what makes stuff more complicated is that these pollutants could and can interact between themselves. This will make stuff much difficult anyway. And what's one pollutant that I will come back to it is ozone. Ozone is not emitted directly by human activities or so on, but it is produced within the atmosphere through a number of reactions involving NOx and VOCs, volatile organic compounds, which could involve sunlight, some facts about air pollution. This is poor air quality is one of the deadliest phenomena, and it has been ranked so far the 5th in the death risk. It's in the last few years, the numbers could change. Actually, it's something like 8% of the deaths worldwide are attributed to the pollution. And in some area that could be much higher than this. And what is estimated so far, this is calculations and measurements, modeling, and so on. We estimate that more than 4 million people are dying by pollution every year. And this is outdoor pollution again. Summing together indoor and outdoor pollution, we take it up to 8 or a little bit less than 10 million so far. And long-term exposure to pollutant could lead to a number of diseases. And what is important now, if we don't die by pollution, we are infected. We have had problems dealing with that, resulting exposition to air pollution, and it is estimated that more 90% of the population of the world is exposed to high level of particles, and which go above what the WHO is recommending guidelines, which is 10 microgram per centimeter cube. So this is a huge. Well, I'm showing here some data and obtained through models published 3 years ago by some nice people, and this shows, the the number of years lost due to air pollution and mainly to particles. You can see that there is some hotspots, which is India, China, east of China mainly, but China global, and Africa, part of Africa, Lagos and Nigeria and so on, which is Lagos is one of the most polluted areas in Africa. What this is give you the you have the numbers here, and this is number of years lost per 1,000 kilometers square and per year. And you have when you have brownish, what goes to brownish color, it's you have more than 5,000, and it goes down to less than 1. But again, this is based in the model on models which will combine field measurements, and we don't have field measurements over the world. In many places there is no data, but one has to work on based on the models. So there is some 4 points that I would like to highlight. Is that since the 70s, UK debt has improved. I mean, going reduced by large percentage, 30%, because I don't know if you have heard about the London smog and the Los Angeles smog, and which led to a large number of deaths in these 2 areas. And London, UK was of the affected area because of some chemistry, mainly sulfur oxides and acid rain and so on. So UK was of the biggest area due to air pollution, and now things have improved. In Africa, one of the hot spots is Nigeria and so on this region over here. India is becoming and is one of the worst places to be now, and China. But China has done a lot since, I would say 10, 20 years ago. They have been working a lot, doing research and taking measures to reduce air pollution. But still problems. They have problems, but they are doing, in my opinion, a lot of work in that sense. In Europe, sorry, I will be showing you a lot of data on Europe, because I'm in Europe and I could get the numbers and the reports and information much easily from Europe than other places. And the most harmful pollutants at the moment are considered like PM particles, NO2, and ozone, ground level ozone. Then this is the latest estimate I got on, which are numbers from 2018, published in 2020 reports. You can see that in Europe, the numbers is something like above 100,000 dead due to particles and PM 2.5. PM particle matters of 2.5 means that there are particles with a diameter of 2.5 micrometers or below. And so there is some decrease in the contribution of PM 2.5 in the death ratio. And this is a decrease of 13%. NOx, NO2 led to something 55 deaths, which is considered as decrease from 2009 by 50%. But there is a problem with ozone, and the problem is worldwide, not in Europe. You know, China has that. I'm talking about China because I know that place quite well, and they have done trying to do a lot, but ozone is still increasing, and the chemistry is very complicated. And in Europe, the number of deaths due to ozone, though it's lower than particles and NO2, it is increasing by 20% compared to 2009. So air pollution is not only killing people, but also it has impacts on cultural heritage. And you can, all of you, see different places, even in Morocco, where you have deposition of pollutants and many impacts of air pollution. And this is the cost also is high. You know, that's in Europe, in other places, there's a lot of research activities dealing with this topic. Well, I told you a little bit about health, and they said that the cost economy is very also important. And I have here I compiled some recent numbers, which I could get. And this is a recent report, I think it's 2020-21, and indicating that in 2019, in European countries, the reduction of 1 microgram per cubic meter in PM 2.5 would increase the gross domestic products in Europe by almost 1%. And this is something like 200 euros per capita, which is a lot. Sorry. And this increase is 95% of this increase could be essentially due to the lower absorptivities, and people get less sickness and so on. In France, I reporting here some numbers which have been published in a report from Senate of France. This is something like more than 100 billion euros per year, and this report was published, I think, in 2015. And I was talking to you about Nigeria and other places in Africa. One of the worst places to be in Africa at the moment is Lagos. And you can see that the ambient air pollution caused less than, I would say, $2 billion US dollars in 2018, and representing 2% of Lagos state GDP. And the same year, it caused something like more than 11,000 deaths, which is the highest in Africa. In Morocco, I tried to get some numbers, and I went to the website of the Ministry of Environment, and this is what I could see. You can see that the numbers, the study was conducted in 2014, and you have the estimation is more than 10 billion dirham, equivalent of 1% PIB, which is also important. Okay, that's the economic. Then what about the climate? The climate is with air pollution, and air pollution are really linked, very strongly linked. I cannot talk about one without talking about the others, which not so evident for people. Now, it's simple for an atmospheric chemist. This is so simple that we are sometimes surprised that people don't think about that. This is physics, chemistry, and one can explain it quite easily. Now, because you have the same species could impact air quality and climate. Talking about some species like ozone. I've been talking to you about ozone, and I will keep talking about it because it's so important. And black carbon. They are both short-lived species, and they have both impact on air quality and on climate. Other particle matter components like organic carbon, ammonium, sulfates, nitrates have a cooling effect, and at the same time they are components of particles, and these particles are not good for health. Methane, this is a greenhouse gas, but also it plays a role in formation of ozone in the troposphere, in the lower atmosphere, the places where we live. So the changes, triggered by climate change may lead to some changes in the emissions of VOCs or other species, which may increase ozone formation and so on. So both, I would say, there is this linkage with interfere between the two topics, two science areas, and we cannot talk about air pollution without thinking about climate change, and thinking about climate change should rely on air pollution. So we have to work on both. We cannot distinguish between these two. So in short, to show you this species, I was talking about some species. So let me explain to you. Some of you maybe have already seen this one. This is taken from a IPCC report. And you have some compounds here, a list of compounds. Some of them are anthropogenic, which means emitted by human activities, and you have natural effects. And you have here the well-mixed species. Well-mixed species means that these species have long lifetime in the atmosphere. They can live years and years, so they can be distributed all over the world. And then you have short-lived species which do have a lifetime of days, weeks, or something like that, and they could be oxidized and transformed shortly. And this species, what you have here in this column, shows what could be the products from this, the oxidation or transformation products from this list. And this, you have the radiative forcing. To make it simple, radiative forcing is something you compare to CO2 emissions, and you have radiative forcing relative to some periods, and this is in watts by square meters. This is CO2, how much CO2, and everything could be compared to CO2. Then if you go to the methane overall, this is the contribution of methane here, which is, when you think about the concentration of methane in the atmosphere, it's much lower than the one of CO2, but its contribution it's quite important. Then you have other species. So this is, some species are heating and others are cooling. And this uncertainty here shows what uncertainty we have. The most important uncertainty we have so far is on clouds and aerosols. And composition, you have also a large uncertainty here, because this is due to the uncertainties on the composition of aerosols. Anyhow, this is the sum, and you could see that we are, the evaluation of models improved the knowledge and so on. So the species of interest of my talk here, dealing with methane, N2O, I will come to it, and so on, are in red. And you can see that some of them are heating forcers. N2O is an important one. And some of them do cool. They do have cooling effect. So I will be going through this species. So sorry about that. So, and I'm coming now to what is the heart of my presentation, is impact on ecosystems, agriculture, and lands, and so on. And what you could see, the air pollutants that currently cause most damage to ecosystems are ozone, ammonia. Ammonia is a very important one, and nitrogen oxides. Ground level ozone, I'm talking about, when I'll be talking also later on ozone, it's always the ground level ozone. I will not be talking about stratospheric ozone. This is another. Stratospheric ozone is very important for Earth, for life on Earth. It's a very good one, I would say. The bad one is the one we have on the surface. And this is the one which is not good for health and not good for crops and agriculture and so on, and which is pollutant. And the deposition of nitrogen and sulfur compounds could have an effect on surfaces, on agriculture and so on. So then let's move on to agriculture. And this is, I would say, for years and for a long time, and I do remember that for many years, that we have related for a long time agriculture emissions to climate and ozone hole and so on, stratospheric ozone and so on. But the linkage between agriculture and air pollution and air quality is kind of new. It's like, I would say, within a decade ago, people started to talk about that, but now it's expanding. It's really high interest. So you could see, you can find many reports, many meetings, and so on, many papers, more and more papers related to air quality and agriculture. I'm showing you some, and you have very nice publication, nice work coming out through the contribution of agriculture to the emission, and in this case, see that agriculture is being considered now as one of the major NOx emitters, which was not considered in the past. And this is also one of the reasons is that the change in the car. I mean, we are moving to electrical engine and so on, which will reduce the emissions of the NOx and other pollutants, PM and so on. But so the contribution of agriculture will be higher and higher with time if nothing is done, nothing is changed. And I'm showing you this, which was done in France a year or 2 years ago, and you have different workshops, meetings, and proposals, call for proposals, project programs, and so on, dealing with air quality and agriculture. So what are the pollutants, the most important pollutants? I talked about ozone, NOx, ammonia, and so on. So nitrogen-containing compounds are a very important family to look at if you are willing to be interested in agriculture and air quality impacts. So NO2, NO, ammonia, and N2O are emitted from agricultural activities. Ammonia and N2O, I took this from a short report, but I could apply it to your many countries. This is in the UK, and you have something like 88% of ammonia and almost 70% of N2O are due to agricultural activity. Methane and no-methane volatile organic compounds are emitted also by agriculture and livestock and so on. Pesticides and other species like that, but I'm not talking about that. It's not topic, but it could be, could be a theme for talk or two at least. So this is the tropospheric species which could be emitted, and I tried to circle and to highlight the ones emitted by agriculture. Methane, this is in Europe, okay, in 2018. Methane contribution, agriculture contribution to emission of methane is more than 50%. This is a huge. Sulfur compound is not so important. Even in France, in many areas, you are not able to even measure it because it's so low now. PM 2.5, PM10, which has particles which have larger diameters, NOx, NO and NO2, non-methane VOCs, volatile organic compound, and ammonia. Look at ammonia. In the UK, it was 88%, but in Europe, if you take Europe as a whole, it's more than 90%. This is, wow, this is really big number. So this is from France. I took this is the France contribution. It's 98%, almost 100% of ammonia is coming from the agriculture emission in France. And believe me or not, ammonia is a very hot topic worldwide. And I know we have in France a large program to have a monitoring station to measure ammonia in different places, and like different observatories now are trying to be equipped with ammonia measurements instruments. So overall, this is what you have. If I get this scheme, if I limit myself to N2O, methane and ammonia, this is what happened. You have N2O, which is a greenhouse gas. This is the concentration of N2O in the atmosphere. You look at this, and remember that I told you that there is a large portion of N2O emitted in the atmosphere is coming from the agriculture. And so you have very high increase. And I did also show you that the contribution of N2O to climate change is very important. N2O is a very stable compound. Nothing happened to it in troposphere. Once emitted, it will live in the atmosphere for more than 100 years. So it has the only way of its destruction is going up to the stratosphere, where it does some chemistry, it goes to photolysis and so on. So this is an important source, and this is a really important impact on N2O. Methane. Methane, I just show you that agriculture in Europe is contributing to up to 50% of methane in the atmosphere. And this is also the concentration of methane measured in the atmosphere. By the way, this is done in Hawaii, this measurement, but it's kind of background measurement. This is what we have in the atmosphere globally. It's not locally in some place, but this is the global average in different places. There is measurements in different places. If I have time, I will show you some measurements in Morocco on methane. So this is about climate. Again, N2O has a radiative forcing almost 300 times higher than CO2. And methane has something like 25 more radiative forcing compared to CO2. So this is on climate. Then what about air quality? Air quality means that you have this species, so your N2O will not do anything with air quality because it's so stable and it goes to the stratosphere. The other species could react in the troposphere, in the area where we live, and it goes through different reactions. I'm not going to that. I showed you one slide for that. And this leads to oxidant, ozone, and other species. And this will impact the air quality. Then these species will react again, what you have here, and they produce some pollutants, and this pollutant will impact air quality, health, and they also in turn impact agriculture. Okay, so agriculture is not only a source of pollutants, but it's impacted also by, and we will look into that later on, impacts by pollutants. So let me go quickly through a few species which I have selected, N2O and methane. So this, I showed you this before, and this is what's in the slides before, the same thing, increase in the concentrations, and also this is also increase in methane concentration, and these species again do play, the level of confidence in the contribution of N2O to global change and the radiative forcing is very well known. This is known with very high confidence. This is again easy. It's not so easy, but if you are working on the atmospheric processes, you would understand this, because we know we have the concentration, we have the infrared spectra, so we can do the estimation and the impacts for climate change. And methane, again, you can see methane here is directly emitted or it's formed through a number of processes. So this will impact air quality. And this is climate again. So what I took also is just to see and to make this in comparison what exists in the EU and the US. This is, I got some numbers from some reports saying that something like 9% of the, that was in 2019, 17, but I know that Europe will go down with all these contributions, and you have something like 9% of greenhouse gases emitted in the EU are from agriculture. So this is much, much less than energy. But if if the energy will switch, it means this contribution will increase. And this will have to go down anyhow. In the US, this is something like 10%. Then ammonia. Ammonia, this is nice, I would say, nice species. I told you there is large interest in ammonia because it does. I will show you what it does, but it impacts air quality and climate, different senses. So in Europe also this is taken from European Bank, European Commission's data. You can see that this number in 2017, again, the number could change with years, and this is taken from 2017, and you have agriculture is emitting something like 92%, more than 90%. The trends, and this is the emission of ammonia in gigaton over the years. You can see that there is some decrease in some emissions and got stable, but overall it's not, there is no big change. I will show you that later on. And you can, this is the sources: animal manure application, inorganic fertilizers, and the management, and so on. So there is some decrease, but the concentration is quite, I would say the emissions are quite stable from the year 2000 and so on. So this shows you also the sectors, and this is almost the same as this one, but it shows the years, the changes from 1990 up to 2017, and you can see this is what represents 92%, and so the contribution of agriculture has slowed down a little bit, but not so much, and still it is the most important one for NO3 emissions in the atmosphere. This is again what I showed you. This is the data from 2016 data in France. I have no idea about Morocco. I could not find any data. Maybe you will tell me what's going on. So what happened to the ammonia in the atmosphere? So I tried not to put a lot of chemistry reactions, but I will be happy to answer any question you want regarding that. So well, it's I would say we could make it easy. You know, NH3 emitted in the atmosphere, this will react with some hydroxyl radicals. This is well known, and it has a very short lifetime in the atmosphere, in the troposphere. So it is, you know, it will be oxidized. Some of it will be deposited, but most of it, since it's very reactive species, will be oxidized and may go into droplets, go onto aerosols in the atmosphere, and interact with other species, with sulfuric acid, nitric acid, and other species to form aerosols. And this is the problem with ammonia. It's because it makes aerosols, and aerosols are not good for health, not good for air quality and for climate, and not good for agriculture neither. So these particles will stay in the atmosphere. They could be you know, deposited and so on, but they could stay, they could impact air quality and so on. And this is not good for agriculture also. Yeah, this species also could be transported from different regions. What you emit, what's happening in Europe, this is large discussions, and what you emit in France could be deposited in Germany and vice versa. What you get in UK, it could be deposited in other places. It could be deposited in North Africa or other places. So to evaluate that, one has to do measurements. One has to measure ammonia or ammonium or other species, and this is what maybe is lacking in North Africa. The impacts, this is maybe you are more aware than me on it, eutrophication of the soils and so on. And if you bring too much nitrogen to the soil, that could impact the soils and so on. And what you can see here showing you in some region in Europe are very impacted by this eutrophication impact, and this is basically due to ammonia. And so this is 2017 and 18. Acidification. So I started my research on atmospheric chemistry in the 80s, and that was at that time, it was one of the hot topic in late 80s in Europe, because many forests, not only in Europe, it was many forests were completely destroyed in North European countries, in Germany, in the US, and then in China. When I started to work in China around 2000, that was already a hot topic because they had so much SO2 in the atmosphere that they destroyed a lot of, and their research started at the time because it was not health, but because it was acidification, acid rain. And this is also chemistry. Once NOx, sulfur compound are emitted into the atmosphere, you will get some reactions to get acid rain. And acid rain is acids, sulfuric acid, nitric acid, or ammonia, and so on in droplets. And then this will destroy, attack lakes and forests and so on. Okay, so this, well, actually, what I should say that's SO2, as I told you, SO2 concentrations are going down in Europe. As I told you, we have monitors here in our labs, and other places, colleagues also in different places, they cannot even measure it because it's so low. So the concentration of SO2 has decreased a lot in Europe. So the chemistry involving SO2 is less important to take into account now, but it's the chemistry involved in this particle formation are NOx. NO2 concentrations are still high, and this is so the nitric acid reactions with ammonia and this mixture will lead to particles and so on. So NOx are much more involved now than they used to be compared in the particle formations. So this is what you get, the acidification. Again, the same region in Europe are impacted. The Netherlands is one of the places impacted. So here, what you have here is trying to summarize something on air quality again and the impact on agriculture. And so once you have the emissions in the atmosphere of different species, this species will be, as I said in the beginning of my talk, you have dispersion, transportation, transformation, reaction, oxidation, and so on in the atmosphere, which lead to secondary pollutants, and the species could be deposited, and this deposition here could impact agriculture, soils, and so on. And all this could have and lead to bad air quality, impact air quality, and increased air pollution in different regions. So quickly, I will be trying to go to the ozone, because it's really important and it impacts air quality and so on. So, briefly, it's a really bad species. It's not produced, it's not emitted directly by any activities, but produced in the atmosphere through a number of reactions, can play an important role on air quality, climate, and is an oxidant in the atmosphere. So to make it easy, and again, sorry for these reactions, the source of ozone in the troposphere is this reaction, this scheme here. NO2, which is emitted, is photolyzed with sunlight and produce NO and oxygen atom, stable states, which react with oxygen, leading to ozone. So this is the net reaction. This is the ozone formation. So this involves these two reactions, that's all. But what happened then, if you go to places where you have other emissions, you add these sequences, this CO, which is carbon monoxide, VOC is volatile organic compounds, inorganic compounds volatile, which has hydrogen, oxygen, and I mean carbon and hydrogen atoms. This species will react in the atmosphere with this radical, forming HO2. HO2 will react with NO, leading to this. And you go through this cycle, you increase the number of reactions leading to ozone. And this is what could explain the ozone formation in the atmosphere, in the troposphere. And it's really quite difficult chemical system to understand. So I'm going to move through this. There's too many reactions here, but I can come back to it. Well, what ozone does, it can damage cells. People have been working on this for years in different labs. It's not my specialty, but I have seen data on that, and seen now high concentration of ozone is impacting production and so on, and it's impacting you know, the growth of trees and plants and so on. So it does. This is which I took it from some colleagues, which they have been looking and they still looking on the ozone impact on some species, some plants, and one of the example I took is the leaves, with leaves, and they explain this through a number of mechanisms, how it goes, what it does have, and then looking at when you do it in the lab or in the field, you can see this is the yield production, and this is ozone concentration over 7 days. You can see that the production would decrease for a number of species depending on the species and so on. And this is done for a large number of plants and so on. So basically, one of the explanations, this is they attack the stomatal regulation and detoxification systems and so on. So this is basically your research field, and I'm sure that you can understand that much better than I. Well, the ozone concentration impact on health has some regulation, and it has also some threshold values and so on. Regarding the vegetation and forests, there is it has, you know, there is this what we call AOT, which is accumulated ozone threshold. 40 is 40 ppb, and this is a number that has been followed and adjusted, and people have been looking at this to find out how it could be impacted, how land, forest, or vegetation could be impacted. And you can see here that this is done for Europe. A number of regions are impacted. This is what you have here. Triangles are stations where we measure ozone concentration, and you have brownish areas are very high concentration, and the others they are based on models. When you have all these colors here, these are models, and this is confrontation between models and measurements. And this is the ratio, this is the proportion of land which is exposed to high concentration of ozone. And this is something like almost 50% of this is in 2018 exposed to high concentration of ozone. So I try to look for Morocco. No, there is not, to my knowledge, There's not such studies in Morocco, but what I try to look, I looked at the EMAP models, try to see how Morocco looks like. What you have here, triangles are all measurements. So please have a look how many stations they have in Europe. And I know that Morocco has few stations, and well, there is a lack there. So what you see the colors here in both cases, what you see the models predict that there is quite high concentration of ozone in these areas here, which is east, south region of Morocco. And so this goes for the concentration up to 60, 55 ppb of ozone in this region. But model, one has to compare them with measurements. This should be done. And I hope that our colleagues in Morocco could think of that. Yeah, I'm almost done. Still a few slides. Sorry, I've been so too long. So ammonia, this is one question we could ask, how we can reduce this. So this has been done in some countries, not all of them, and Europe is setting limitation and putting a lot of regulation on this. And I'm putting an example. One of the Netherlands have been impacted a lot by ammonia because they are emitters, cattle and so on. They have been emitting a lot of ammonia, and ammonium concentration is quite high over there. So one example, some data show that there is a large decrease by something like 50% in the Netherlands of the total emission of nitrogen within years. And this is some agricultural practice, and there is some ways of reducing that. Regarding ozone, so this is really complex, and ozone is increasing in different areas of the world, and people and countries are trying to reduce it by taking different regulations. Well, a few more slides where I try to show a few directions, what I suggest. If any one of you is interested to look at these aspects, agriculture and air quality, there is one hot topic at the moment is how the surfaces, the treated surfaces by fertilizers could contribute to formation of these species, which is HONO, nitrous acid. This is a really unstable species, but it does produce OH radicals, which is the master oxidants of the species in the atmosphere. So there is a lot of going on on this. I've been myself working on this for years. And so I also showed you, this is looking at the impact and the sources of the NOx in the atmosphere resulting from the agriculture. Which agriculture is contributing to the NOx emission, in which conditions, which surfaces, and so on. So this could be a good topic to look at. So there is another one, which is a really nice one, but also needs some motivation and so on, is looking at VOCs, volatile organic compounds, speciations, and emissions. So here you have examples of number of VOCs over here, which have been measured, as emitted from maize, rapeseed, or wheat, and so on. So you could see this is summarized, give you what forests are doing. Forests are emitting a lot of isoprenes. Crops are emitting a lot of oxygenated volatile organic compounds, and other lands, monoterpenes, which are oxidizing the atmosphere, and they can lead to the formation of ozone and other species, other pollutants. So there is something else I would advise, if colleagues are willing to do that, is look into the low-cost sensors, and this could be something to do, at least to have an idea about the deposition, exposition, and so on. So this could be set in different places, and could be good thing to do. So the nice thing, if you are willing to do a really great job with regard to the ecosystems and atmosphere exchanges, there's something going on now. It's what we call SMEs, the SMER, the Station for Measuring Earth Surface Atmosphere Relations, which has been developed by some colleagues at the University of Helsinki, and they have been setting different stations. And this is a really complete station looking at different aspects from the atmospheric pollution, earth surfaces, and a lot of stuff have been done. And this is a really great project. And this is an example of the SMER station. It's it's tower with different area with different sampling points, sampling of different species, aerosols, gases, and so on, and the lab next to it, and that's what we do it. And this is one of the reasons having that. I would say having this kind of platform in Morocco would really enhance the knowledge and activities done in Morocco in this regard. So the last slide, almost the last slides, I would like to show you something which I thought is very interesting. We have been with some colleagues at the University of Rabat in Morocco. We and other European colleagues, we set up station, what we call Atlas Mohammed 5 Observatory, which is in Meshrifen. It's something like 20 kilometers south, 19 kilometers south of southeast of Ifran. We have a station which is running for 3 years now, 3 years, and in which we have a number of equipment measuring some greenhouse gases. And this is done mainly with our colleagues from CNRS, LC, and CEA in Paris, Egypt, Zurich. They have equipment, they have set up equipment Picaro there. They have been looking at methane, and CO2, and you can see this is the measurement we have done since 2018. This is the measurement started in October 2018, and this is what we have since then. You can see the increase over here, and you can see the seasonal variation and so on. And this is really, and I must say that this is the only one in North Africa delivering this kind of measurement, and it's associated with European infrastructure because it's called ECOS program. And recently, that was in 2019, we had a large campaign in that place, and in the Fez, city of Fez also, we did large measurements, and we took there a system which did measurement of the column. This is measurement, what we have here, a point measurement. We have TV station there, and above the ground, it's like 30 meters. We set and sample air, and we have the measurement of CO2 and methane. And then we took this instrument, which we borrow from some colleagues in France, and we did for the first time, really a month of very nice measurements. And this is column measurement. That CO2 and many other places, methane and other, are measured also by satellites, by aircrafts and balloons, and also by satellites. And the only way to calibrate the satellite measurements is to do this kind of measurement, is to do column measurement and point by point measurement. And this, you have to combine all this data to say that, yes, the measurements from the satellites are correct or not. So this is basically the measurements of from the in the infrared. So this, our colleagues at LSC CEA are running two stations, one in Côte d'Ivoire, and another one, Mace in Ireland, and ours. So we are working together with our colleagues at Mohammed University, 5 Rabat. So this is a really nice You can see here concentration. I'm not going through details through that. Well, you can also, what you could do, actually, you can have trajectories, and what we have seen for methane, for example, you have this is, you can do modeling, calculation trajectories from where air masses is coming, then attribute to it your methane, for example, is coming from where. And you can see that in some cases we have air mass coming from the east of Morocco with high concentration of methane or CO2 and so on. Okay, so let me conclude. I have been too long. It's 1 hour. Sorry for that. It was not planned, but so my conclusion are more on future question and what could be done. I hope that I did convince you that agriculture is linked to air quality and climate, and a lot of should be done. So there is a lot of question with that regard. What will happen with the increase in temperature? That's what I said. So there is large chance that some trees, some plants would emit more species or emit different species in oxidated state or not. What would happen when we have the changes in the land use? What kind of type of emission we will have? So what is needed to evaluate that is to look at the flux measurements, speciation, concentration measurements, and this also will require information on the usage of land, usage of what's the practices. And also that requires also knowledge of processes, the processes on soils, on soil, processes in the atmosphere and in different phases. So there is a new observation means. So now Europe has Sentinel, has not only Europe, I would say, there is a large program which called Copernicus, dealing with atmospheric measurement and so on. So there is a lot of data coming out from different places. And what this is coming, microsensors, is, if I had to advise something, this is one thing could be done and quite easily in Morocco because the cost is not so much, but it gives you at least some ideas about pollutant and exposition levels and so on. And one has to look at the ways of reducing pollutant emissions. So this is, well, I'm done now, and I would like to acknowledge a colleague of mine working at INRA, Grigno, from whom I got some information, and he told me that we would be happy to collaborate and cooperate with Moroccan colleagues if you are interested. So I also thank all of you for listening to me, and I hope that you got something. I did not. Yeah, I was clear enough, and I was not clear enough. Please ask questions, and we can discuss and go on. We don't have to discuss only now, but you can come back to me, and I'll be happy to answer anytime. Okay, thank you so much to all of you, and I am done.
Thank you, Dr. Mellouki, for this rich talk. I personally learned a lot about this important field that is poorly covered in our training and research activities, even its importance. Thank you very much. It was very rich. I saw that there is no question yet. So the only question, yes, the presentation will be shared. Dr. Mellouki has accepted to share his presentation publicly. So if there,
I can leave my email address also. You can share it.
Okay.
You can share it with everyone, and I'll be happy to discuss through WhatsApp, through email, no problem. I feel that it's a really important topic for Morocco, and this has to be developed anyway at some stage. We're basically looking at, I read the green generation, Génération Verte, the generation in Morocco. So it has to come. This has to be linked to what it has been. The production is not enough. You can produce so much. But what you are doing to air quality, what people, you can feed them, but at the same time you can kill them. So no, this is not the best way to do it. One has to think both. And we can use what Europe has gone through, not only Europe, China, US has gone through as experience to improve the practices and so on in Morocco.
Okay, perfect. So personally, I have two questions because yes, the first one is technique, is related to the technique. You mentioned that microsensors that could give good information and reliable information, and it's low, it's not costly. They are not costly. What are the accuracy related to the heavy equipment that you mentioned also?
Yeah, actually they are not, for some species, depending on the species. They are species related, but at least you have some ideas. You can say, like, if you are looking at PM 2.5, you will not be able, by the way, they are calibrated all the time. You have to, if you get sensors everywhere or in different places, you have at some stage come back with the sensors, or you have to take some calibration system, which you can move it to different places and do calibration on site. And this, the microsensor will tell you at least if you have, if you are above some levels, give you the levels. If you are, you have a lot of particles, or you have not much, or something like that. It could be sometimes within 20%, within 100% in some cases, depending on sensors or something like that. But it's important because it gives you an idea about how much, if you are in polluted place or not. Then if you feel that you are in polluted place, you have to go into that. You have to look closer. I can tell you that now, many places in Europe, and even research labs like ours and different places, we are trying to get to be equipped with this type of instrumentation. Africa is covered also. There is a lot of programs. Many people are trying to get these sensors in different places. I was asked personally about Morocco. People are willing to do something like that. There is, I know that there are some research programs supported by the US in different places. They are covering East Africa, and now there is proposal in which I am involved for covering West Africa, set up monitors in different places. And what exists so far, it gives you some idea. But I have not seen much on Morocco, I must admit. My feeling is there is a lot of data missing in Morocco. It's not only sensors, but also data, availability of data. If you are willing to look on the data from Morocco, you have to go, you cannot get them from, or I had a hard time to get them, I could not. While, in France, for example, or different places, you have places where you get online concentration, direct concentration measurement, different pollutant, and so on. In Morocco and other places, I would encourage people to deliver them, because if you don't do that, other will do it for you. Now measurements from satellites are available. I have seen data from Sentinel showing a lot of leaks recently in Algeria, methane. You can see very, very high leaks of methane in the atmosphere. Algeria doesn't have to say that. They can hide it, but you cannot hide because there is eyes. Satellites have eyes, and they can see what's going on. I have seen also over Morocco some spots of NOx spots and so on. So there is stuff to do.
So the future action is so according to you as an expert, is to buy equipment and to start research in this field?
I would one of the first thing I would do, because I have chances to teach, and I know this is, I have been doing it for something like 20 years with China. If I think back 20 years ago, many few people or research institutions were dealing with air quality or training. And they start to work at the universities, develop labs and so on. So the universities teaching is the first step, but it goes along with some instrumentation. Having this education, your engineers coming out from the engineering school, agronomy, etc. in Morocco, they should have at least basis on this. So then they will understand what they are doing with regard to air pollution, air quality. So starting research, small applied research, I would call, which will not cost too much, with teaching, education at universities and at school and so on. But when it's done, the best thing would be is to have the smear, as I showed you, the smear example. This is, la Rolls-Royce de la recherche.
Okay, thank you. I have some questions in the chat. The first one from Anish Kumar. Modern agriculture, which is mainly monoculture, has stressed the whole world by climate change, which we are getting affected one and all. Mixed cropping or multi-cropping is the only way to go forward. He's asking for your comments or on more solutions.
I cannot really answer with regard to the crops development and so on, because I have some basics, but not more that. But what I have seen is that you have emissions from almost every species, every plant, that's life. That's life. You have everything could emit something. So one has to look after that, check which plant or crops are emitting one, and which condition and so on. And the future is kind of, in your area, you are selecting plants for development, for more productivity, and which you could plant under dry condition and so on. This is good stuff, good work to do. But for me, in the future, one has to think both ways. We has to think about that, and at the same time about what's going to happen, what is emitted and so on, what's going to happen to this species. I don't know if I did reply to the question.
Yes, he's asking for the strategy of mixing cropping, not cropping only one agricultural species, not. So because according to him, monoculture, so farming based on a single culture will be responsible for this situation.
I'm not sure really, because I'm looking at atmospheric chemist. Okay, as atmospheric chemist, for me, you have more species. You can have more species as plants, as crops, and so on. They could emit different components into the atmosphere. And for me, what is important is what is emitted. You can emit low concentration, low levels, but the effect could be much more important for toxicology, for climate change, and so on. So one has to, have an eye. I wouldn't say directly yes, multi-crops would be much more positive. Maybe yes, maybe not. But I prefer to look what is coming out.
So the next question is from Dr. Al-Amiri Bushra. She's asking about another pollutant species, which is fluoride. Fluoride, yes. Fluoride, I don't know. which is abundant in many regions in Morocco.
In the atmosphere or in soil?
Dr. Bushra, do you think that is in the atmosphere or in water?
Well, we do measure. There is no much. If she's talking about fluorinated compound, this is another aspect. Fluorinated compounds are very bad for climate change because they are climate forcers, and so they are really stable in the troposphere and so on. But if she's talking about F minus or something which is onion or something, this is something different. We do measure it. We have station here next to my lab. We do measure some species, and it's not so abundant what we see in the place I'm doing. But in Morocco, in different places, I don't know. But this could be acidic. That could be acidify particles, acidify droplets, and so on.
So it's causing some damage in.
Of course, of course.
But
depending on concentration, if it's a high concentration, yes, one has to look after that.
High
yes.
concentration in water, mainly, I think.
She said in water?
No, she said both, but
okay.
I guess the most impactful is in water. You're right.
Probably. Yeah.
Her second question is about the relative impact of animals versus crops in gas emission.
Well, animals do emit, it could be, well, it's always difficult to balance, okay, depending what you're looking at. Animals, methanes and ammonia. Okay, crops, if you are using fertilizers, N2O could be processed through soil chemistry and could be emitted to the. I wouldn't, again, as atmosphere chemist, I wouldn't say I choose this and not this. I would reduce both. Yeah.
So the other question from Zohor Abayil, she thank you for the presentation. Considering the shown trend of increased atmospheric nitrogen deposition, does it mean there is more nitrogen supply that should be considered from atmospheric origin?
I have shown you that actually there is basically NOx, okay, and ammonia. Then you can have other species which are in less, they have less, the concentration there, concentration is less important. There is a large number of nitrogen containing species, but the concentration are smaller, but they could be toxic. Their evolution could be toxic. So NOx, basically what I showed, I don't know if I did show it or not, are emitted by both. Agriculture is part of it, but the recent discoveries, the recent measurements are showing that NOx, agriculture could be a large contributor to the NOx. So this is coming, and so I can tell you that France has problem with the NOx because the traffic concentration, the European Union is pursuing France because they are not respecting the guidelines of the concentration. So cars, traffic in urban areas, this is mainly by traffic and plants and so on. So what we can see, what we measure, is that emissions are basically, when we are talking about NOx, it's mainly through transportation and so on. Less by agriculture. There is 20%, something like that, which is due to agriculture. But when coming back to ammonia, it's huge. It's activities related to agriculture, and I would really advise. I can advise. I'm old enough now. I can advise. So Morocco should take care of that. should look into that, because, well, Africa, there is many countries are taking care of what's going on in different places in Africa, and Lamto in Côte d'Ivoire is nice. They have an ecological park. They have a really nice lab. They're measuring the deposition of many species, nitrogen containing, phosphorus containing, and other stuff like that. I don't know if it does happen in Morocco. Does anyone measure the deposition in Morocco? Deposition of nitrates, phosphates, and so on. I have not seen any paper or anything like that, while in other countries. And so my feeling is, I think Morocco could take lead in many areas like this.
Okay. So the following question is a complex between agriculture and chemistry from Omar Idrisi from INRA. Is there an optimum farm size and characteristics, and also agricultural practices, farming systems, to be both environmental friendly and economically feasible?
Okay, so I can try to answer, but through my reading. So there is, as I told you, there is some practicals. People are moving to some practices in agricultural farms to reduce emissions and not leave, using the way of using manure on land, the way of keeping it in different places, closed places, and there is a large number of practices to reduce that. And I think many countries are going to that, at least in reducing ammonia emissions. They have to do it. And this is happening in different places. So I would advise, there is a lot of, I have seen from some reports that there is ways of reducing emissions. So there is practice.
So it remains a question from Adoramigba from Nigeria. How do we ensure the importance of integrated soil nutrient management is well captured? Actually, this question is related to agriculture.
Yeah, well, this is someone of you guys could reply to this. Not as more.
Okay. So
I'm sorry, I cannot give positive answers on some stuff. I don't know much. I can say.
Thank you, Dr. Mellouki. We arrived to the end of this webinar. Dr. Fawzi, he says, thank you, Dr. Mellouki, for the very informative seminar, and he has to go for another meeting. Dr. Bekawi, you still, okay. You are still with us? So he's leaving. Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Mellouki, for this rich talk and for your answers. It was very rich, actually. And I would like to thank also the attendants that enriched this webinar. So for the next steps within this series, as we mentioned during the previous webinar, we will have the summer break now until the early September. Then we will have conferences every 2 weeks at the same time, each other Thursday at 10 a.m. So the following one is scheduled on the 2nd of September. Mr. Sabata, can you share your, yes, okay, the flyer of the next webinar? It will be given by Professor Mohamed Boulif, affiliated professor at UM6P and specialist in plant pathology. He is also the ex-director in ENA, Agriculture National School in Meknes. And the webinar will be entitled Integrated Disease Management in Wheat within the One World, One Health concept. So please note the date is on the 2nd of September at 10 a.m. Morocco time. The next one, Mr. Sbata, will happen in the 16th of September. So after 2 weeks, we will have the same time slot. So he will be given by Dr. Pierre Taberlet. He's a senior scientist at CNRS France, and he is known in environmental DNA field. And the conference will be entitled Environmental DNA for a Sustainable Agriculture. So and the following webinars will be informed as long as we will go. So thank you all for your attendance. Thank you again, Dr. Mellouki, for your intervention. It was very rich, and hope we will meet again in another webinar. And thank you all for your attendance, and see you at the next webinar in September. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. And Baruch Eid.
Dr. Mellouki.